When the sheriff's boat eased up to my private dock that morning, blue lights swirling in the haze, I honestly thought maybe, just maybe, they'd finally caught whoever kept floating those stupid glass bottles over to my side of the water. You ever see a deputy look like he'd rather be anywhere else? That's what I saw, climbing up my dock, adjusting his belt, kind of mumbling my name, Mr. Bramer. We got a report. Apparently your yacht's been illegally moored on HOA property. And for a second I really thought he was joking, like maybe I was on some hidden camera show. My dock, on my land, with my boat. But nope, he was dead serious. Karen over on the peninsula says she's invoking waterway jurisdiction. You could see the apology in his eyes. I actually laughed right in his face, told him, "Well, tell Karen I'm about to invoke courtroom annihilation." That's me, Tyson Bremer, 42, software architect, professional meeting survivor, escape artist from the corporate hamster wheel. For 20 years, I hoarded every bonus check, every vacation day, dreamed about breaking out somewhere nobody could tell me what color my mailbox should be, and then finally did it. 3 acres of marshland on Cattail Sound, just outside Pelican Cove. I built myself a low-slung bungalow, kept things simple, worked remote when the mood hit, and parked my biggest pride and joy, 42 feet of classic fiberglass and teak, my yacht, the Digital Detox, right behind the house, floating on my own dock. That boat was my promise to myself. Freedom, solitude, weekends away from conference calls, nobody nagging me about aesthetic harmony. What I didn't know then was that no matter how far you run, you can't always outrun an HOA president with a personal vendetta. Enter Tricia Lormont. Though nobody called her that, they all just called her Karen, even her kids half the time. She ran Bayside Dunes, the exclusive community across the inlet. If you ever want to picture her, imagine a woman whose bob haircut looks sharp enough to slice cheese, who treats bylaws like the 10 Commandments, and who sincerely believes her HOA badge grants her universal authority. Problem was, my property wasn't in any HOA. I picked it for that reason. But in Karen's mind, my house was the aesthetic liability across the water. She actually put that in her newsletter bold font. At first it was almost funny. Her teenage son and daughter would paddle over in a canoe like some weird reverse pirate raid and leave glass bottles tucked up under my dock. Inside, printed HOA guidelines, suggestions for how I might better fit the coastal serenity palette. The first one was 12 pages lecturing me about nautical colors for watercraft. Apparently the navy blue on my yacht was aggressively masculine and threw off her entire planned aesthetic. I kept the bottles, laughed it off, ignored her notes. When she realized I wasn't playing, Karen cranked it up suddenly. I'm getting official-looking cease and desist letters on Bayside Dunes letterhead. Certified mail, no less. She was spending HOA dues just to harass a guy who wasn't even in her jurisdiction. She claimed my yacht obstructed visual harmony, that I was violating the sanctity of our shared waterscape. I nearly spit out my coffee the first time I read that. My personal favorite, I put up some solar string lights along my dock for safety at night. 2 days later, bam, a citation for unlicensed illumination, apparently in violation of the Bayside Marine Ambience Code. She'd actually named it like it was a real law. But then it stopped being funny. One morning I walked down to the dock and find a big official-looking notice of seizure chained to one of my pilings with a bike lock on thick cardstock, embossed seal and everything. It said my dock was now a navigational hazard under Bayside Dunes emergency powers. Had to dig out my bolt cutters to get it off, took pictures of the scratches that chain left. You better believe I saved every scrap of evidence. But all of that was just a warm-up act. Karen's fatal mistake came when she actually hired a private towing company. No warning, just paid them to show up and remove my yacht from my own dock. Picture this. I'm standing on my deck, coffee in hand, watching a commercial towboat rolling up to my place. 2 big guys hop out, start prepping chains and hooks, all business like I don't even exist. But see, I'm not new to crazy. I'd installed a security system, cameras everywhere, and a drone that launches automatically if there's motion near the dock. So my drone goes up, live streaming the whole circus to my phone, and most important of all, right, into my attorney, Maya Bronson's inbox. Maya lives for this stuff. She's not just a lawyer. She's a property rights pit bull, the kind who doesn't blink when HOA presidents threaten to invoke waterway sovereignty. Before those tow guys could even get their chains around my boat, Maya's on the phone with the sheriff's department and has an emergency injunction filed before breakfast. Sheriff's boat comes out, the tow crew bails, and Karen's credibility takes a torpedo right to the hull. 3 weeks later, we're in court. And let me tell you, I've never seen anything so satisfying. Judge Fenwick, 70, if he was a day white-haired, deep-tan, former Navy man who'd been on these waters longer than Bayside Dunes, had been a thing presiding over the case. Karen shows up in her own version of Yacht formal Navy blazer gold anchor brooch binder, thick enough to stop a bullet, and a full PowerPoint presentation. She talks for 10 minutes straight, spouting phrases like maritime aesthetic sovereignty, community, waterway aura, infringement, unified shoreline philosophy. Judge just sits there, totally poker-faced, until finally he lifts his hand and says, slow and clear, "Ma'am, that man's dock is on a separate tax parcel. You have no jurisdiction over his property whatsoever." Karen's face turned 3 different shades of red. She stammers about the greater good community standards transcend property lines, but Judge Fenwick's done. He brings the gavel down hard. "This is America, not Atlantis. Your HOA rules stop at your property line. Case dismissed." But that wasn't even the best part. See, I'd countersued for harassment, attempted theft, emotional distress, you name it. And Judge Fenwick wasn't just letting it proceed, he fast-tracked it. Now it's Maya's turn. She lays out every bottle, every bogus notice, the failed yacht heist. And here's the twist, the HOA's financial records. Turns out Karen spent over $15,000 in HOA funds to fuel her crusade against me, hiding it in the budget as waterway beautification. Some of her board members are in the courtroom, and you could practically see the color draining from their faces. Maya rolls the drone footage of the attempted tow, and then she hits them with damage estimates. If those guys had messed up my hull, I'd have been out $100,000 easy. Judge Fenwick's face gets darker by the minute. He turns to Karen, asks if she's got any legal basis for what she did. She mumbles something about implied maritime commons, and that's when he drops the hammer. $35,000 in damages to me covers my legal bills, fixes the dock, and for the harassment. Plus, this is my favorite, Karen gets slapped with 100 hours of community service, specifically in property law education. The judge even orders her to a 2-day seminar called Property Lines, They're Not Just Suggestions. He signs a restraining order, keeping her 500 feet from my property, land, or water. And then Judge Fenwick looks right at the Bayside Dunes board and tells them to put up signs at every waterfront lot saying objects across the inlet are not under your control. They're required to send me a written apology. Oh, and from now on, any future HOA president has to complete a course on jurisdictional limits. The look on their faces, you can't make that up. The fallout was quick and ugly. That night, the Bayside Dunes board holds an emergency meeting, unanimous vote. Karen's out as president, banned for life from holding any board seat. They sue her personally for the missing money. Pelican Cove starts buzzing about the yacht incident, and Karen's little real estate business, which thrived on her HOA ties, starts bleeding clients left and right. 2 weeks later, her husband files for divorce, irreconcilable differences, financial recklessness. Even her mother, sitting in court, was overheard saying, "I warned her about this for years." But karma wasn't finished yet. The DA reviewed everything and hit Karen with attempted grand theft, fraud, and misuse of fiduciary funds. She got probation, 300 more hours of community service, and $50,000 in fines. When the judge read the sentence, her tough-as-nails mask finally broke. She just broke down sobbing right there in court, mumbling about standards as the bailiff led her away. So, yeah, I guess the moral is sometimes the real pirates aren't out there in the Sound. They're sitting behind a HOA newsletter clutching their bylaws like life vests. And sometimes if you keep every bottle, every fake notice, every scrap of evidence, justice actually shows up in a judge's robe swinging a gavel like a sword. So what do you think? Is there ever such a thing as too much community spirit? Ever run up against an HOA that tried to reach a little too far? Drop your stories or your hot take in the comments. I read them all. And if you think property lines should mean something, hey, share this with someone who's ever tangled with a power-hungry neighbor. Let's see how many Karens are really out there.